Welcome to Fear and Greed Sunday feature. I'm Michael Thompson. Every weekend, we like to dive into the vault and pick out an interview that really stands out for us. It's something perhaps that you might not have heard, and even if you did hear it at the time, you'll want to hear it again. It's certainly the case for me with this one. Brendan O'Shannessy has got to have one of the coolest jobs in the world. He is a super yacht captain. Now, these aren't your everyday yachts. These are vessels that can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And Brendan is a fascinating guy who gives us a terrific insight, not just into that world, but also into the kind of leadership required to run a vessel like that. So sit back and enjoy this interview from April of 2022 with Superyacht captain Brendan O'Shannessy, who just happened to be doing this interview from the other side of the world, of course, from the bridge of a superyacht. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. I reckon we've heard more talk about super yachts in the last couple of months than at any time before. Russian oligarchs have had their vessels seized in ports around the world as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. It certainly draws attention to the sheer wealth and opulence on display. After all, these are boats that can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Back in 2020, we spoke with super yacht captain Brendan O'Shannessy about what it's like on board, both for the owners and for the crew. Now, Brendan has published a book through Bloomsbury about his experiences, about the lessons he learned working in a high-pressure environment, and about the pretty extraordinary world of the super wealthy. The book is called Superyacht Captain. And I'm very, very pleased to say Brendan O'Shannessy is my guest this morning. Brendan, welcome back to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be back with you again. I couldn't believe when you said that intro. It is almost 18 months, 2 years since we last spoke.
Yes. Now, look, the question I love asking you, where are you? Because you could be anywhere in the world. Where are you right now?
I am sitting just behind the bridge in the captain's office on a approximately 100-metre yacht that we've just moved up from Seychelles to the Italian Tuscan coast.
Wow. I'm in my home office, clothes everywhere, a mess. It's wet outside, just so you know. Look, Brendan, you've got a great story. You started out in the Australian Navy. How did you go from there to being a captain on a super yacht?
It started with that great corporate hero for me, raider for some, Alan Bond. 1987, America's Cup Fremantle. I was a boy, and I just saw this world that just didn't exist on the west coast of Australia. Still does not, of course. And it just lit something inside me that I wanted to be a part of. Took me 13 years later to get there, and the Navy was not a sidetrack. It was an amazing decade, incredible experience. But I always knew where I wanted to be. And then a few years later, a bit of time in commercial shipping in the middle, I had the chance where a childhood friend in the classic yachting story said, "You've got 3 days. If you can get here, you can join the boat in Monaco." I packed up everything, hopped on a plane, joined the boat in Monaco. That's plus 20 years ago, and that's my story.
Wow, so you were crewing, and then you just sort of went from vessel or yacht to yacht and work your way up the ladder. Is that how it goes?
It is. I came in with maritime qualifications, and I sort of hid those in my pocket for a while because I wanted to learn the industry, and I really needed to. It is a different market sector. I think what I try and promote is that it's a real career path. It is formal, structured training. We're under the same banner of rules as all the maritime ships. Huge employer of young and, sadly now for me, not so young Australians. And it needs to be thought of as such.
Okay, so what kind of vessels are we talking about here? How big are they? What are they worth?
Okay, so let's go through the diaspora of yachting. And I'll define it as plus 24 metres with a permanent crew. So we're going anywhere from seasonal employees, a skipper and maybe a partner, and they run a boat, all the way through to 150 metres with 99 crew, full-time doctor, full-time security teams, and all in the middle. So that's approximately 5,000 yachts cruising the world and spread across the world. And that really is the yachting industry. Obviously, to support every person afloat, there is a shipyard, there is a financial controller, there is a safety manager, there is a technical manager. So there's a lot going on there.
An enormous amount. I mean, who are we talking about that owns these sorts of vessels. They are the super, super wealthy.
It really is. I think and I speak to this in the book, we are bombarded in the popular media by what we perceive as high wealth, be it the A-list movie star, the rapper. They're not in the league of the large yachts. They own, maybe they charter for a week. We're talking double-digit billions, some of which you might read in a wealth list, many of whom their names might match a brand that we use, that dynastic wealth. Some you just will never hear of unless you're in that space. And they love the fact that these yachts give them privacy, security, and a level of personalization they cannot get anywhere else in the world.
You must have some cracking dinner time stories.
One thing that I uphold, and I do in the book, is we pride ourselves on the privilege of seeing this inner world and not retelling. I will, in a private setting, breach a positive story. I've had access to watch with some intimacy, not for an interview, not for a meeting, but for weeks, months, and years, some of the most powerful names in the world. And some of them don't receive fair treatment in the popular media because the popular media just wants to have a story. And it's quite nice every so often to set the ledger straight and say these are quite wonderful people. Or not.
Yeah, well, and you know, the funny thing is I always remember as a journalist and starting to interview CEOs, just realizing how ordinary a CEO was in a business. I mean, just a normal person who had done very well in their work career to become a CEO. Even super rich people, they're just normal people at the end of the day.
They are, very much. There are some traits that I think are consistent. And you might say, well, how do you go cross-culturally and say they're the same?
Yeah.
If I was to say the tightest cultural group in the world, depending on which list you look at, there's about 2,800 to 3,000 billionaires in the world. That is a very tight cultural group. They transcend national boundaries. They send their children to similar schools. They holiday at the same places. Their behaviors are quite similar. What I see, and you've done these interviews as well, Sean, is they can be in a room full of business noise, and they'll be being briefed by person A, B, and C from legal, from finance, from risk, and they seem to be able to pull out uncannily the couple of bits of information that needed to come out. And I'm always in awe of that. And that's what I've seen as something consistent.
Yeah. Stay with me, Brendan. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Brendan O'Shannessy, author of Superyacht Captain. What's it like working? I mean, it must be a very high-pressure environment to be working in. You're commanding a very big, expensive vessel. You've got crew working under you. Sometimes I'm sure that the owners are extremely demanding. How do you deal with all this?
You're quite right. Let's just say the feedback loop is very fast.
Is that how you put it?
You know, a sportsman knows their success or failure immediately, and I think we do also in yachting. There is no way to ever completely meet that level of expectation from these people. They have the investment in these is incredible, hundreds of millions, as you spoke of. They have made that investment, so their expectation is that high. To try and think you're going to meet it every time will set yourself up for failure. I think maybe I draw upon an Antipodean childhood and a cultural heritage that I'm proud of. I tell it straight, and I'm very honest. It is never in my best interest to say no to a guest. So if I am saying no, please believe there's a very strong reason that I'm saying no, because it's not in my best interest. No, because of safety. No, because of my legal obligations to the crew, to the vessel, to where we are, or no, because it just can't be done. The laws of physics. Funnily enough, that's one of the few things that constrain us. The laws of thermodynamics and physics can't be bent. And so largely it's always yes until there's a force making it no.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the crew? I mean, there's been streaming shows in recent years showing people working on super yachts, and certainly my kids are right into that. What's the crew like? I mean, do they ever get tempted to just enjoy the party a little too much?
There are market sectors, and the shows you speak of highlight that.
Yeah.
I am privileged to work amongst really professional hotel and maritime crew that come from an incredible diversity, that bring skills that are not just core to the yacht, that they've brought from past lives onto the vessel. And they're out there, they're building their careers, they're working hard, possibly they're raising families off the yacht. No, it's a bit like saying when Survivor came out, to just drop a brand new one, of the first ever, is that the same as an SAS selection? Not really. And in the same way, some of the TV shows, they are reality shows. One thing I think they do get right is that there is a heightened pressure awareness. In business, I think business is tough. I often give the example that business leadership is like a high stakes tennis game, but you get to change ends, have a sit and have a drink, wipe yourself down with a towel, go home every night.
Yep.
At sea, on a yacht with the guests, the game is squash, the ball never stops bouncing and an opponent never misses the return. You don't leave it. You don't go home. You don't have a break. Whether you're hotel, whether you're maritime, you are just constantly in the game. And I think that's one of the biggest differences. And I think that's what the shows, speaking of yachting, try to highlight, that it does bring out your emotions.
So your lifestyle, though, you must be on a yacht for, weeks, months on end. And then is it that you have a break for a period? I'm just really interested in what you do away from the yacht even, and where home is for you.
I don't know if you remember this, but I live in Austria, which is a great place for a mariner.
I do remember that. Landlocked, isn't it?
It is like Odysseus. You walk inland until someone says, "What are those oars for?" And you know you've walked in far enough. Yes. In my captaincy, because the vessels can't not have leadership 365 days of the year. So many of the senior positions now are on a term called full rotation. I work 6 to 8 weeks on the vessel and I have 6 to 8 weeks off.
Uh-huh.
And that varies. More junior crew won't have that level of rotation. They might work a 5 months on, 1 month off. For the period that I'm on, it's 7 days a week. So people say, how do you, it's amazing. You have half the year off. I don't have weekends when I work. I don't have downtime. It's a choice. It's very enjoyable. The time does fly. It's highly demanding, but that's the lifestyle we've chosen.
Yeah. Look, Brendan, are there any of these ultra luxury vessels in Australia, or are they mostly European, North American based?
Australia, thank you. That's a great question. Australia is really coming of age. There's been some regulatory changes to allow charter in Australian waters in 2019, and the industry's really begun to recognise Australia as a destination. So we have had yacht owners, Australians, that seek to own yachts, and whether they cruise in Australia or they keep their yachts international varies. What we're also seeing now is yachts coming down to Australia. We know what we've got in Australia. The last couple of years of cruising restrictions, people have looked for destinations further than just crowding into the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. And Australia is going to be a net winner of that. There is great leadership in the Australian superyacht and marine industry, and there is infrastructure coming along and investment coming along. So I think it's actually a great time to be in around Australian superyachting.
Brendan, I love talking to you. After last time, I just go away and daydream for a couple of weeks really about what you're doing. I think a lot of us, it's sort of envious, but at the same time appreciate just how much hard work it is that you do. 6 to 8 weeks on a yacht without seeing family, friends, all that. That's hard yakka.
It is hard work. You've got to love it. I told you I just sailed up. It's an 18-day transit from the Seychelles. It was glass calm coming across the Indian Ocean. And I saw a breach off in the distance. And I thought, that's another whale. Okay. We pulled up a little bit closer. And it was a full-size sperm whale. So we photographed it, registered. That was not a bad day at work. Yes, we have to do our fire drills. We keep watches. The engineers are fixing things. The deck are washing, the interior are cleaning. But it is an amazing workplace. And one of the messages from the book is to young Australians or to parents of young Australians, to educators, is don't overlook that this is a real career for Australians who love the water.
Brendan, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks so much, Sean.
That was Brendan O'Shannessy, author of Superyacht Captain. Superyacht Captain, that's Superyacht all in one word. Go find it. It's a great read. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.